Hi guys, Happy New Year and welcome to this week's Star Wars Lads Monday special. I'm just kind of gonna piggyback off of what Liam did a few months ago, where he did the Star Wars Jedi Duelist Power Rankings, and I'm gonna do the Star Wars Dark Side Duelist Power Rankings and the tiers that I want to put all these characters in. I went with Dark Side specifically because there are Sith, but again, the rule of two, especially during the Skywalker saga era, is the one that kind of defines how many can even be there. And as a result, there's not too many true Sith that you can put down, versus where, there's so many Jedi in the originals, the prequels, to a degree in the sequels, and the TV shows and the High Republic. Just so much content out there. And especially in Star Wars canon, there isn't that many, Sith Lords. So I thought it best to kind of bring out as many dark side users, especially because there's so many notable characters like Kylo Ren and Asajj Ventress. So I guess to kind of set the whole stage here, I did mostly just try to keep the people here on this tier list, people who can use the Force. I know I'm kind of cheating with General Grievous there, but I have my reasons. And preferably they are actual duelists, because then this kind of defeats the point of these rankings. But that still was a little challenge, but I got over 20 plus, so I think this should still make some interesting, tiers here. Instead of the standard S through D, obviously I kind of went with quotes just like Liam did. So top tier, I am all the Sith. Emperor Palpatine says in episode 9. Always remember, I am fear. That's a Maul line from the Clone Wars, I believe. The dark side is in our blood is what Kylo Ren tells to Rey in episode 9. Be careful not to choke on your aspirations. This is an ever memeable quote from Darth Vader in Rogue One. And if only you knew the power of the dark side, one of Vader's original, Empire Strikes Back great quotes. So it's a little harder to come up with like quotes, I think, too, that are exactly fitting for each one. But I tried my best. So yeah, without further ado, let's get on with this. I am going to put Grievous. And look, I know Grievous doesn't know how to use the Force. He's basically just a cyborg. You know, why would he fall under the dark side duelist power rankings? Mostly because of affiliation and because of training. He is obviously part of the Confederacy of Independent Systems plan. He is more of a general, a fighter, than he is like someone interested in the Force. And I know a lot of legend stories have him wanting to be able to fight Jedi and learn and somehow get a way to use the Force, because that's always felt like, even after his transformation, something that's held him back. But again, this whole list is strictly canon. So affiliation was a big thing for me, because he is with Dooku, he is with Palpatine. Sidious obviously doesn't know who it is until his death, and even then he doesn't know who Palpatine really was. And he is trained by Dooku, who's one of the greatest duelists ever for Jedi and Sith. So yeah, there is a little bit of that. He's also had some interesting victories. Let's say he technically defeated Talzin, but that was in the Son of Dathomir comic, and it wasn't really his real reason for winning. It was Dooku and Palpatine combined, and then him going for the killing blow. Uh, he's fought Asajj Ventress and has defeated her before, or at least gotten her running. He is again a terror. Just he happens to not be so great against most Jedi, but there has to be a case made for his longevity, that he hasn't easily died either. So yeah, I mean, he's not up there, and he is very comical. He's clearly debilitated with his coughing in episode 3 and all. But I don't think he's horrible. I really don't. Yeah, so I think because of his successes, affiliations, training, I mean, he does kill Kit Fisto's old Padawan too, so he has the ability to defeat several Jedi if he really pushed himself. it does require him to cheat, yes, sure, but he has proven that he can kill a Jedi. So I'm gonna put him on the be careful not to choke on your aspirations. Kind of works with his coughing and all that. Just hear me out. Um, hmm. Mother Talzin. That's a tough one because technically she doesn't fight with a lightsaber and she's not Sith, and it's kind of harder to even fully call her a dark side duelist. However, in the Son of Dathomir comic, I will say this: she does ever so carefully put herself into Dooku's body and takes over him, and she does duel against uh, Grievous, I believe, at one point. So she is capable of fighting. It's obviously not her strong suit, and she has to use a whole other body, but she's smart enough to take Dooku as her vessel to be able to do that. And at least for a brief period of time, a solid battle's worth, she can stick with someone without having any experience. Um, Again, she isn't really dark side per se, but she has done things to empower dark side users. Obviously, Maul, Savage Opress, who's later on this list too. Asajj Ventress, helping her with her, vengeance and all. She does care for these people too at the same time, so she's not exactly all evil. But as a duelist, she does fall pretty low on this list. So yeah, I'm gonna put her at if only you knew the power of the dark side because she is thwarted eventually. She is killed by Palpatine, even if it was a forced fight. Yeah, it's hard to really put her as a duelist per se. The one example that we have is not even really her. Next, Pong Krell. Obviously, his dark side embrace wasn't completed in the way that he wanted to, but he massacred the 501st. And I mean, he's physically a specimen. He's got 4 arms, both dual wielding double lightsabers, f- flies from huge distances. He's cold, he's calculating. He's cruel more than anything, which fits a lot of the qualities of dark side. And he did want to go over to Dooku's side. He did want to submit himself fully before the 501st were able to eventually capture him and take him down. I mean, he does. If he was the Sith, he would have been, almost like an Asajj Ventress, maybe like a Grievous, but more organic. And he's a Jedi who's fought during the war, so I'm going to assume that he is quite skilled, quite powerful. We don't know how long he is in the dark side state mentality. I don't know if I would even want to count him, but I thought just for the sake of argument, let's say he was committed to the dark side values and principles for a month or two. He has shown himself to be a pretty capable guy. Obviously, we don't know who else he's fought in a duel before, but just seeing how raw strength he is physically, it'd be hard to, really look at him and say he's not a good duelist. So I think for now, I'm gonna put him on. Be careful not to choke on your aspirations. He could go up, he could go down. I think we'll kind of have to readjust at the end of this list. Next, Savage Press. Um, I'm gonna put him up all the way. Always remember, I am fear. Works well with the Maul line too. Yeah, I mean, what's not there to say? I mean, he's killed the Jedi with his horns, right? He's fought Obi-Wan multiple times, and yeah, he didn't necessarily win. He is ultimately killed by Palpatine, who, but I mean, even though Palpatine is going using whatever dark side magic or principles and his dual lightsabers, he is still a capable fighter. He does destroy and kill throughout the Clone Wars, especially once the Night Sister magic is done on him. And I mean he's not Maul's level in my mind, but he is a worthy challenger. He is, I mean, his first introduction after he's fully converted was to just destroy all these troops and all these two Jedi master and apprentice at this outpost that even the commandos had to go and rescue Delta Squad. So that should tell you just how much of a wrecking ball he is. And he's only lost to some of the most elite people ever in the dark side and the light side. So I can't really fault him. And he's not Sith, but he follows the dark side, and he is taught by someone who was a very powerful Sith at one point. It's hard not to look at his track record and think that, hey, he's a capable fighter. And with time, maybe with a different master, he could have been something even more special. But at the same time, he does lose a little bit because he's not pure rage or pure animal. A lot of that is the Night Sister magic that made him into who he is. And yeah, I mean, to a degree, I also put him up here because he's one of my favorite dark side users ever. Just so unique in the Star Wars galaxy. So yeah, I would put him up as an A tier. He's shown, force ability that's quite solid too, but he is more of a physical specimen. He's got training from Dooku. There's a lot of things to him that you have to respect and like. Now we're coming down to Snoke, and Snoke, we never see him duel. He obviously does belittle and demean Kylo, but Kylo does eventually trick him and kill him. He's a very powerful Sith presence, obviously, to get the ownership, essentially, of the First Order out of nowhere. And the fact that he is, to a degree, a Palpatine clone. He is more Strandcast than he is a clone, yes. But he's not a duelist, at least as far as we've seen, because I think this is where more of my headcanon comes in. Yes, he's disfigured. He might have been like that from the start, but maybe not to this extent. He does look like he suffered massive injuries. Maybe he fought Luke, and maybe he didn't. He has a relationship with Luke that hasn't really been explored. And that could be some interesting thing to see maybe 15 years in between Luke's academy really, jumping up during his travels with the High Republic era collection with Lord Santeca. Maybe just before all of that, he kind of was able to go head on versus Luke and Snoke was, and it went really bad for him. I'd like to think that he's strong enough to have survived a duel with, at that point, probably one of the best duelists out there. At the same time, I don't know much about his origins, and we still don't. He is very mysterious. Presumably, he taught some training to Kylo, and I don't think Kylo's fighting style is very much, underdeveloped, but to bring out that rage, to bring out the darkness into his style is something that someone who actually understands fighting has to be able to show, I'd say. Yeah, it's tough. I want to say that he's above Talzin though. I will put him at a D tier because D tier only because we don't really know much about what he ultimately was or became as a fighter before he met Luke and presumably got destroyed and the floor wiped up with. But to a degree, maybe Luke does also think that he's dead because of how the duel went. I don't know. This is something that we're not really sure about. This is something I want to see explored. It could even be like a force hallucination fight that physically deforms him. That'd be pretty interesting to see. Who knows? But the point is, I don't think Snoke is just how he looks like in the sequels without significant damage, which would presumably come in a fight. So I'm going to put him here. The fact that he survived does give him a little bit more credibility, and that he trained Kylo gives him a little bit more elevation. It's hard. Some of these characters, especially when it comes to canon, are hard to really judge because we know of them when they're already in a certain position, and then they're just not, younger or older. We don't really see them grow or change. They're just the villains, and that exact point in time, right? We don't really get a Vader sort of arc for a lot of these characters with decades to kind of show them how they changed, grew stronger, weaker. So, yeah, I'll leave him there at D. To be careful not to choke on your aspirations. I think that's fair. Now, the Grand Inquisitor. I will put him in the dark side is in our blood. And I know this might seem a little controversial. Like, how would he not be equal to Savage? He's Inquisitor. He's presumably killed Jedi. Yes, he probably has, but I don't think he's anywhere near as much of a terror as Savage was. You know, he didn't he wasn't involved with things that literally shaped the underworld and all that. He was a temple guard that was converted to the dark side, and he lost to Jocasta Nu, right? Much of that could have been of arrogance and all that, and he's kept around post death by Vader as some sort of ghost. He's not exactly a Force ghost, but he's tortured to still be unable to exist with another of the Force, that he's still clinging to the mortal and physical realm. But that being said, he's a skilled fighter. He gives Kanan a lot of trouble, even if at that point Kanan is very underdeveloped till the finale as a fighter, obviously because of his limited training. I mean, he can best Ezra any day. It's hard. We don't really see too much of him either, outside of his interactions with the Ghost crew and just the Charles Soule line of Darth Vader. And they aren't the greatest showings for him, but you don't get called the Grand Inquisitor for nothing with a lot of these duelists that we do see some of their action with. And ultimately, there is also that forced vision of him in the temple, the Lothal temple, where he fights Kanan to a degree, but it's mostly just to get him to pass his final fears, to be a sort of final trial for him. I want to say that he's like a C tier. The dark side is in his blood. To what degree, we still don't know. We may never know because he has a pretty short lifespan as a character. That being said, he is called the Grand Inquisitor. He directly reports to, Darth Vader. And maybe in Fallen Order 2, we see him as a villain. I don't think these Inquisitors are done with. It's way too early in that timeline. So maybe there's a Grand Inquisitor fight waiting for us sooner or later that could, maybe kill someone like Sarah or something. So just food for thought. Next is the second sister. I will put her, on a solid C tier as well. Ooh, this one's tough because it's hard to judge video game characters versus movie characters and TV show characters, because a lot of video games is about fighting the villain in the end. And there is a personal connection with the second sister here into the story. She's obviously Sarah's old Padawan, who was the trauma of Order 66 and everything eventually led to her capture and torture into becoming who she was as the second sister. And if you're the second sister, I'm not saying numbers really mean anything, but maybe she's one of the earliest recruits. Maybe she has some of the most obvious potential. Who knows? But fighting against Cal, who admittedly isn't the most developed fighter until you play as him, and then he kind of starts developing his abilities and overcomes his trauma. She wipes the floor with him until the very last duel that they have. And even then, she's nothing compared to Vader. She can only submit. So, yeah, in a way, I think she is, just because we've fought her so much in the games. She's a capable fighter. She has immense acrobatic style to her fighting that made her a pretty hard character to fight against at times. She clearly deserves this. I would say she deserves this. Again, I'm putting her and the Grand Inquisitor underneath Savage because it's really hard to justify this character, who is admittedly skilled, as someone who actually changed something due to their skill, due to their fighting ability, due to their dueling ability. She probably did kill a lot of Jedi, sure, but we don't see that, and we don't know to what extent. And there's a lot of them. So for a lot of these Inquisitors, they might have just teamed up 3 versus 1 against some poor Jedi Padawan. And I'm not saying she did. I'm not saying the second sister did, but we still need a little bit more than just video game fights and cutscenes. Next is Kylo Ren. I'm going to put him all the way up. I'm gonna put him all the way up because he's got the Skywalker bloodline in him. That is also Vader. Darth Vader is part of that bloodline, and I mean he's a skilled fighter. He fights Rey and loses, yes, in the Force Awakens, but he also took a huge Wookiee blaster shot to his abdomen, and he was still able to beat his side like a maniac and win. So win in the sense of like keep his wits about him and take advantage of Rey for the most part. He defeats Finn with those injuries, and Finn, presumably janitor or not, has the stormtrooper training with the baton, so he knows how to wield it even if he isn't good at it. And he wipes the floor with him. He plays around with him. In the Last Jedi, we don't really get a Rey versus Kylo fight, but he takes on more of Snoke's guards, and he is pretty capable of a fighter there too. Takes some of them 3-on-1. He does need to get bailed out at the end by Rey, but he does do quite extensive damage there. Obviously, he gets tricked by Luke in, unfortunately, that final battle that is basically just a forced Zoom call, which, again, I love it. I love what Luke does there, because it belittles Kylo completely and makes him even more unstable, unbalanced. He can't commit to those things that he's saying to Rey throughout the whole movie because of his uncle, right? Um, but I mean, he's a ferocious fighter because once we see him in Episode 9, he's healthier by his standards, right? He's not injured or anything, and he wipes the floor with Rey at the Death Star ruins. And it's not like he's even trying. And she's not a bad fighter herself. She might not be the best fighter, but she's used a baton her whole life. She knows different forms of fighting. She's trained under Leia for a whole year, and yeah, she has some training for Luke, and he obviously has training from Luke for years, and he killed the original Ren from the Knights of Ren, so he knows how to defeat dark side duelists and light side duelists. So it's hard to dismiss his legacy and what we've seen on the screen and the comics, and to not put him at the same tier as Savage, because Savage might be a more ferocious fighter than Kylo, but Kylo's got the bloodline, and he's done enough as a character for me to put him at the top not A, but S tier. I am all the Sith, because dark side user as he is, maybe he's not a Sith. He easily could be considered a Sith if he was trained under Palpatine, and Palpatine seems to have had some ideas of taking him on in Episode 9, even though he ultimately flings him off the fight area, the fight arena. But yeah, I think he's a very strong S tier. Now this one, I feel like it's going to be a little controversial to a lot of people. Just kidding. No, he's just a straight S tier. When we're talking about dark side duelist, and it'd be so rude of me to put Dooku down as A tier, because yeah, I mean he destroys Anakin. He always has in Attack of the Clones, and he always destroys Obi-Wan in every fight. He starts to lose ground to Anakin in these final fights of the Clone Wars, and especially the his eventual beheading and arms being cut off by Anakin. But that's more of him goading a guy who's progressively gotten more used to him as a fighter and not realizing the limitations of his age. He's a much younger and more powerful in general man. So yeah, I mean, some of it he kind of brought on himself, but he's a killer. I mean, he trains Asajj, he trains Savage, it trains General Grievous, and he can wipe the floor with all of them. He's the master of Qui-Gon Jinn, so that should tell you just how skilled this guy has always been. And I mean, he holds his own pretty well with Yoda. He does take the cheap route of forcing Yoda to use the Force and save Anakin and Obi-Wan when they're unconscious and gets away. But that being said, he's a killer. He kills so many people in the Clone Wars. It's hard to even remember someone off the top of my name, but he's a monster, and he is there at the Talzin fight in Son of Dathomir, and he breaks down Talzin and gets freed of his body. He loses to Maul in a way, but I don't think a proper fight against Maul would result in him just flat out losing. It'd be more of a draw. He's elite. He's a fighter, and we'll be adjusting each tier row. But God, it's hard to say Dooku isn't an elite duelist. He just is. I mean, he has Form 2 built into him. He has a curved lightsaber that is meant for dueling. He harkens to the old times because he wishes that he could fight like they did. And he does. Darth Maul. That's tough. That's tough. I'm gonna put him for right now in the S tier. I'm all the Sith. But this one's a little hard for me because I want to say that he's better than Savage, but I don't know by how much. Yes, he's trained by Sidious / Palpatine. He fights against Dooku and wins. He kills Qui-Gon. He frequently unbalances Obi-Wan. He does eventually lose to Obi-Wan in the end. He can fight and kill multiple Inquisitors. He's lived a long life killing people and duelists of all natures. So, in terms of sheer volume, from his early state of killing that captured Jedi apprentice in his Darth Maul comic, all the way to his death against Obi-Wan, he kills a lot of people. A lot of people. That being said, he is like a Sisyphus character. He's always going to build himself up and lose. And he loses pretty easily to Ahsoka, and he's on the run. I think if they had a more proper fight, Ahsoka wins that a little bit more. Obviously, she's not going for the kill. She's trying to capture him, and that's not really his plan either. Yeah, maybe he does have a little bit of mercy for her and says, take my chance, join forces with me one last time. Sure, maybe that affects the duel to a degree, but no, I mean, he is top dog. He also does make it very clear to Savage that while they may be brothers, he's below them. And he only really loses to the elites. And it's hard to even say elites because he loses to some of the greatest of all time. So, yeah, I think he's a good S tier. Vader, nothing needs to be said here. He's an S tier. He kills so many Jedi. He kills so many other dark side users. When he's Anakin, when he's Vader, just terror, just absolute terror. It is levels to him. Yeah, I don't even have to say anything. He is one of the greatest Sith of all time. He could have been the best, the greatest of all time if he wasn't so hampered by his burns and having robotic limbs. But even then, monster, absolute monster. Palpatine. I'm putting him in as an A tier. I know. He easily kills Kit Fisto, Sassitin, and all these guys. He kills Savage. He kills a lot of these people, sure, but he doesn't really beat people on his level per se. He doesn't beat Yoda. In a Force battle, he might have been able to beat Yoda, sure, but as a duelist, he wasn't good enough. And George Lucas himself has said that yes, he uses the Mace Windu fight to his advantage to make Anakin think that okay, if Mace kills him, then Anakin will not have someone who could save Padme, and uses it to feign weakness. But as a duelist, if you do consider in canon that Mace Windu has Shatterpoint, or if you don't, Lucas had the idea that Mace Windu beat him fair and square. And this is a guy who can spin around, destroy Maul, destroy all these people. But he's really more of a Force user, more of Force lightning, all that. He's not really a guy who brings out the lightsaber. I think he could lose to an Anakin or a Vader if Vader was fully healthy. I think he could lose to a Kylo in a straight duel. I think he could lose to Dooku in a duel as well if it meant that they had to use lightsabers. He's just overwhelmingly more powerful when Force abilities, but he's not really bad as a duelist. He has clearly enough pedigree, and he's probably killed several powerful Jedi in secret before, his machinations and politics and all came about. But I don't think he's more powerful than Amal as a duelist. I think his strength lies somewhere else. Now, Quinlan Voss, I know some of you are like, why is he on here? He's a Jedi. Yes, but also no, because if you read Dark Disciple, yes, he does go to the dark side, trains under Dooku. He doesn't necessarily kill many people. I don't think he actually does, but he's just he's like the top tier acolyte, without maybe even higher than Grievous at one point. But he is in this dark side of mind. He does ask Asajj Ventress to teach him the dark side of the Force to be able to assassinate Dooku before he succumbs to it fully. He is in the dark side for months, and I think some estimates are like somewhere between 4 to 6 months. This would have been an 8 episode arc, so we would have seen Quinlan Voss for a long time as a dark side user, as someone with a twisted mind. I'm gonna put him as an A tier. Always remember, I am fear. Part of this could be clouded by my Legends remembrance of him. He is so frequently dark side influenced, dark Jedi in the original Clone Wars comics from like 2005 and all. But if we're talking strictly canon, he is in the Force, dark side of the Force for a long period of time. He can fight on equal ground with Asajj Ventress, if not be better than her at points. He's very physically gifted. He trained alongside Kenobi for a long time when they're growing up. But he's also one of those Jedi that doesn't necessarily have to fight against other dark side users, because it's always an Anakin, always a Obi-Wan, someone else, a Yoda or Mace Windu who's kind of involved in that. He's always off doing some other crazier, darker missions that let him be jovial, but once he's in the thick of it, he kind of has to embrace more of his darker elements, but we don't see a lot of that. But at the same time, we look at a character like Boba Fett, he's so epic in Legends, but he hasn't really been in canon until recently with The Mandalorian, with his escape from the Sarlacc, and now as a crime lord on Tatooine in the Book of Boba Fett. And we're presumably going to get content of him that's equivalent to what he did in the Legends era. So in the same way, I think we have to consider that Quinlan Voss, even if he isn't like anywhere near as much as a dark Jedi as he is in Legends, his time spent, who he trains under, his abilities and his skills, both as a light side user and a dark side user, I will put him as an A tier. Darth Momen, or Momen, the architect of Darth Vader's castle, kills his master, sure. Can't kill Vader. He has to use other people because he's trapped in a mask, and he's more of an influence. He's never interested as a duelist. He's not even interested in too many Force abilities. So I'm honestly gonna put him as the lowest tier. He's, if only he knew the power of the dark side, because his focus is so elsewhere, and he's so easily mishandled. Well, not mishandled, destroyed by Vader. Sure, no matter what, there's gonna be a power gap, but it's not even a fight. It's pretty pathetic, and Vader just demolishes him. Okay, this is the eighth brother, if I'm not wrong, and then that's the fifth brother. So the eighth brother is the guy who flies off with the helicopter bladed lightsabers, Inquisitor blades, and it's damaged, and he just falls to his death. We don't really know much of him. He's in the comics, but he doesn't really kill anyone. Yeah, it's such a pathetic way to die that I'm just putting him at the lowest tier. Fifth brother, he did cause a lot of trouble, but he's more of a, he's very dumb. He's not a good fighter. He's really silly and stupid. But that being said, he's fought against Ahsoka, he's fought against Kanan and Ezra and Maul, and he's an Inquisitor, so he's presumably killed Jedi younglings or people with Force abilities and potential. He does die to Maul pretty quickly, but he is an Inquisitor. It's kind of hard to say he hasn't killed anyone. His dueling is very barbaric and very silly. He makes Grievous look very elegant, I guess I would say. So I'm gonna put him as D, like a C tier fighter, almost a D tier, but reputation kind of is there, and he doesn't die horribly. He just dies to an elite fighter. Um, yeah, this is tough. I'm not sure where I want to put her as. Seventh sister. She's also just destroyed by Maul. I mean, Ezra could have killed her. He hesitates because he's not really that guy. She is handled by Ahsoka pretty easily as well, but she's a bit more a sophisticated fighter, uses her arsenal well, her droids and all. She's much more competent than the fifth brother. She's a very weak B tier for me. I could put her down, but she's not great. She's not horrible either. She's someone I think definitely tormented and killed a lot of her prey. The way she talks to Ezra, especially when he's younger, she just like completely just talks down to him, and it's like half seductive, half playing with her food, half torturing. There's again a lot of off-screen things about her that I just want to give her the edge on. Ren, he's only in the Kylo Ren 4-issue miniseries. He gets destroyed by Luke to a degree, but he doesn't die. He has a lot of damage on his body. Maybe that's from fighting, maybe that's from dark side, or what he calls the shadows influence, or something going wrong. He is in Crimson Reign. We do see him in the Knights of Ren, so I'm curious how much we're going to expand on him, if he kills anybody. He does lose to Kylo. He's a limited character. Mm, I don't know. To lose to Kylo is not a bad thing, but he's only up against some really elite guys. He lives a long time. I'm gonna put him low B tier for now. I will adjust this list for sure. So the 10th brother, it's kind of hard to gauge him because he is very much just a comics exclusive character, which is so much harder. Formerly Prosset Dibs, kind of falls to the dark side, doesn't have eyes. He's in the Charles Soule Darth Vader line, defeated by Mace Windu in his Mace Windu comic. He's recruited as an Inquisitor, so he's obviously of some quality, but he gets killed in the Order 66 trick that's played on him. He loses to Mace Windu, but I mean, a lot of people would anyways. Doesn't show enough for me. He kind of goes out cheap, but I don't think anything is as cheap as the eighth brother. Put him as a C tier. Who? This one's still tough. She is Momen's master. Dart Shaw, she seems to be more of a career Sith, but she's also killed by a dude who's way more interested in art, creating things. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to judge. I'm gonna put her as pretty low tier. If you're gonna lose to an artist, right, who doesn't even care about doing, it's kind of on you. Ninth sister. We only really see her in Jedi Fallen Order and Charles Soule Darth Vader comic. She obviously survives that, loses an arm to Vader, is killed by Cal Kestis eventually. Physically intimidating fighter though. I think she's kind of on the Pong Krell level where you don't want to mess with her, and she has one of the harder boss fights in the whole game, up in the Orchard Tree, the Great Tree in Kashyyyk. That being said, problem with a lot of these Inquisitors is they don't show a lot. They're kind of just there, but they're trained and they live long periods of time. She lives pretty long for Inquisitor, but she dies pretty relatively early on in the Inquisitorious life cycle. Gonna have to put her as a C tier, even if I do want her as a B tier. And then finally, I mean, the sixth brother, I don't really see much of him. He doesn't really do much. I think he dies. He's so forgettable. I'm gonna put him as, just a D tier. Asajj Ventress. That's where it gets tough. She trains Quinlan. I don't think she's too far off power wise from Quinlan. She might be more actually. Trained by Dooku, trained by the Night Sister and Mother Talzin, trained Savage, is able to escape him when not many people can escape his hunting ways. Constantly fights Obi-Wan and Anakin, and though she's on the run, she's able to make a pretty good duel out of it. Her fights with Ahsoka, she destroys her, but Ahsoka is pretty young. Ooh, it's tough. But I think because she trains Quinlan, because she spends so much time, she has a pretty awesome redemption arc, and she's fighting till the end of her life. She's trained by a Jedi exile of sorts. To survive for so long when she really shouldn't have even been alive, to show so much force potential in so many different ways, to unfortunately beat Grievous out power wise, but also cause the Night Sisters to kind of die. I'm gonna put her as a B tier, or not a B tier. I'm gonna put her as an A tier, but barely. But yeah, I mean that puts us as every character that I could think of to put here as canon. Obviously, there's like Malak and Revan and all that and games, but that's old and legends. There's Plagueis, but we don't really know anything in these canon, only a name only. I probably have missed a few people here and there, but I try to get as much as possible. At least the ones that have had significant or potential significant fights in dueling ability. But yeah, let's work our way bottom up. Sadly, I'm gonna give this lead to the eighth brother. I'm gonna give the sixth brother after Darth Shah. Talzin has to be the worst. She has to, because at least Momen killed his master. Talzin's not a dark side user in the same way as a Sith is, and her fighting skills are not really put to the test. Momen has at least fought Shah in sparring or previous attempts to kill her before he finally succeeds. I'm comfortable with that. Grievous, Krell, Snoke, fifth brother, 10th brother, ninth sister. I'm gonna put Grievous at top. He is a fool, but he has been pretty capable. Pong Krell, yes, and then ninth sister. I'm gonna put Snoke above the fifth brother just because he's so lumbering and bad. 10th, I'm gonna still have to put fifth brother over the 10th brother, just because he fought Mace Windu. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's actually done much, and he dies pretty early on in the Inquisitorious life cycle. All right, let's go up to B tier. Grand Inquisitor. I'm gonna put Trilla. I'm gonna put Trilla as above Grand Inquisitor. Ultimately, I think if she had lived longer, she would have been equal to, if not better than the Grand Inquisitor. I find that the Grand Inquisitor, especially when he's younger, losing to Gostanu kind of puts him down there because she's just an archivist. Sure, she can fight, sure, but that's not her focus. And Trilla at least is fighting someone who builds his way back up and improves as a fighter. Ren, third, and seventh sister there. I think that's pretty fair. Palpatine over Savage for sure. I'm gonna put Asajj over Quinlan. There's just not enough about Quinlan in canon that shows him as a dark side user killing people or anything. There's more of him as like a strategist, a commander, general, than he is really, you know, a duelist on the field killing people when he turns to the dark side. And I don't think he's really killed many Sith or Sith acolytes as a Jedi. Whereas we know Asajj Ventress has actually killed multiple people and fought with some of the best ever. But she's weaker than Savage. I do believe that. I mean, Kylo behind Dooku. Vader as top dog, just the sheer physicality, brutality of him. Maul or Kylo? It's tough. I want to say Maul. Yeah, I'm gonna give Maul. Kylo is very powerful, but he hasn't really killed anyone other than Ren. With conviction, and he does destroy Rey, but Maul's actually killed Jedi his whole life, killed Inquisitors. Yeah, I think this is how I'm gonna put it, and I guess that's really it for the video. These are my Star Wars Dark Side Duelist power rankings. Let me know what you think about this. Do you think I've gotten them all right? Have I missed anybody in canon? Obviously, this is what my focus was. And if you would change it around, let me know. Leave your comments down below. I'm always open to discussion. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, click subscribe, click on the bell for notifications so you're alerted every time a new video comes out. We have videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sometimes we have specials in between those days for like book reviews and special events and news that have just dropped all of a sudden out of nowhere. If you're enjoying our YouTube channel, but sometimes I like to listen to what we're doing, we do put podcast versions of our Friday episodes and our episode reviews of The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett and the Bad Batch onto our podcast platforms, and we can find those on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and several others. You can check that out and follow us there too. And follow us on our social media. We have a Facebook. Like and subscribe to that page there. Follow us on Instagram. Leave comments there and like our posts if you'd like to. And yeah, if that all seems pretty interesting to you, subscribe as much as possible because we are always dropping content for you guys, and we want to hear from you guys on what your thoughts are about the stuff that we have made and maybe things that you think we should be making. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this video.